Hi everybody, it's Matt Stevens here for another episode of the Škoda We Love Cycling podcast. Now, continuing the theme of the Tour de France and the fans of the Tour de France, I speak to Škoda's Simon Donnellan. Now, Simon, he runs the VIP Škoda experience at the Tour de France and has actually been on the Tour on 20 occasions. And he takes us behind the scenes at what fans expect when they are with Škoda on the Tour de France, and also what the Tour de France means to him. And the importance, again, of the fans at the world's greatest race. Simon Donnellan, welcome to the Škoda We Love Cycling podcast, mate.
Matt, how are you? Very nice to speak to you.
I'm good, thank you. I'm here in Derbyshire. The sun is shining. It's very warm. Now, I understand you're nowhere near Derbyshire, are you?
I'm a little bit further away. I'm in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And, I plan to proudly show you a backdrop of the beautiful tropical weather. It's been pouring down all afternoon. Looks like I'm in Manchester in February, so I had to scuttle inside, and yeah, here we are.
Good stuff. Well, Simon, before we kick things off, we're here to talk about the importance of fans at the Tour de France farm. They're integral to what we do. But can you just give us a little bit of a sense of how you first got into cycling? Were you a fan? How did you get here, basically? But through a fan lens.
There's a few people responsible, and I won't go through them all. But it started with my younger brother. I was about 15. He was about 13. Out the blue, he turned up with a racing bike one day and had a world championship kit. Ambitious to start with, woolen shorts and one of those helmets that looks like 5 bananas and a piece of string. Yeah. Of course, myself and our parents were quite worried, but no, he would disappear for hours. And of course, I was curious at this. And, unless your surname's Slack or Yates, you don't typically follow your brother into what their interests are. You try to define your own, but it was all down to him, really, because I then sort of bought a bike from the catalogue, started doing my own little rides. Now, in conjunction with that, I noticed that one of my neighbours in Liverpool, which is where I'm from, he would occasionally have what looked like, was a team car on the driveway every now and again with a massive bike rack and some stickers all over the car, ANC Helfords, of course. Other names that I didn't really recognise, and of course, I would see this chap going out every day on the bike, and one day we were coming back at the same time, and we got talking, and his name was Phil Thomas. And Phil Thomas, a former British national champion like yourself, of course. And Phil basically, and his wife Vicky, of course, because she was professional. She rode the Tour de France Feminine back in the mid-'80s. Sort of took me under their wing and basically guided me into this amazing world that we know. And of course, Phil's brother-in-law, Vicky's brother, was Joey McLaughlin as well. So basically, I would be training with these guys all the time, missing a lot of college, of course, to do this 5-6 hour rides. And that basically got me on the path. And of course, I'm sure you went through the same process in that you become quite obsessive with the sport and you want to know every little detail. And back then, of course, information, it wasn't like today. You relied on Cycling Weekly, Winning Magazine, and you would pore over these. And and that's what I did for several years, and just followed the sport from there. I got into the organisation because Phil basically said, well, come and help us out on the teams. And he was with Rally with Paul Sherwin and Eveready.
Yeah. All the teams that I was racing against as a very young amateur before I ultimately turned pro. But so we're talking about, just to put it in a bit of context, late 80s, early 90s, but mostly late 80s here, aren't we?
Back in the days of black and white, as you know. Yeah, exactly. So that was my path into the sport. And a little bit later on, Phil introduced me to Mick Bennett. And Mick Bennett, as you would know, was organiser with Alan Rushton and Pat McQuaid, Tour of Britain, and he gave me a 2-week contract to work on the Tour of Britain. That contract was extended by 9 years, and I ended up doing all the races that they were, responsible with. Was Nissan Classic, the Prou Tour, of course, which I know you're familiar with, Langkawi, and the Tour de France when it went to UK, of course, in '94, and when it went to Ireland. So I owe those three gentlemen a large debt of gratitude.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? I honestly didn't. I know when we first communicated, I know we've passed like ships in the night many, many years ago. And given what you just said, we have been at the same place at the same time a lot. Yeah. We might have even exchanged a few hellos over the years. But it's so interesting. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? So again, just to set things in context for people listening and watching this, Phil Thomas, as you said, a former national road champion, but a real legend in my eyes, and was somebody that I really looked up to as a teenager when I was racing, when he was in his pomp, and as you say, Joe McLaughlin, winner of the Milk Race, and raced on Tour of Britain as well, the Kellogg's Tour, rode for Zed. So I'm getting quite nostalgic with this. I didn't expect to be walking down back through memory lane into 1980s. So forgive us, listeners, for a little bit of indulgence there. But okay, Simon, what was your first exposure then? And I think you've just touched on it, to the Tour de France. What was the first time you experienced what it's like to be at and around and involved in the Tour de France?
At the grand old age of 21, I visited the Tour as a fan, and that was literally jumping on a bus with my bike down to Grenoble, got out into the mountains, staying at hostels, and I think the first time I watched it was on, I think, Sestriere or Alpe d'Huez, and I was just blown away. First of all, the scale of the thing, even 30, 40 years ago, it was still an enormous event, and it's only grown bigger. The speed of the riders, the colour, the cavalcade, the fans, the noise, it's just an assault on the senses, and that again, it just further got me hooked into the sport. Again, I was fortunate enough, because I was working with Sport for Television, we were involved in the stages when it came to UK back in '94. So we started visiting the Tour prior to that. And then I was deeply involved in the management of the start of the race. As a start manager, Mick was doing the finishes and Alan was on the route, and Pat, of course, and the hospitality tent. No, of course, I'd be polite. Pat was great. It was just an amazing experience for a young chap like myself who adored the sport, and to be involved at such a high level. That was my first experience with the Tour, of course. Okay.
Now, funnily enough, this is just a small detail, but again, it's where our paths weirdly cross again. In 1994, when the Tour first came, well, it'd been in the 70s, hadn't it? But when it came in the mid-90s, before the internet, pre-internet, of course, there were lots of leaflets knocking about where the Tour was starting, and there was a start in Kent, wasn't there? Now, on the front of the leaflet for Le Tour de France in Kent, it had some pictures of these. It was a photo taken in the hop fields of Kent. Correct. And the rider on the front cover of these leaflets for the Tour was me in a Premier Calendar race that I won called the Tour of the Hopfields, and they selected that picture. And I think I've still got one of the leaflets somewhere, because I was like, oh my, like, I never ended up riding the Tour, but I'm on a leaflet probably produced by you guys or in conjunction with yourselves.
It would have been. I mean, we had to, as you mentioned, information wasn't like it was today, and there has to be a whole PR exercise, and the area you're talking about was Ashford in Kent.
That's it.
And of course, Le Tour en Angleterre, which is what it was kind of titled. We had to do a PR exercise with the general public, because they're not used to having roads closed, not just for a couple of hours, but pretty much the whole day, and being taken over by French gendarmerie and helicopters buzzing overhead, and all sorts of things out of the ordinary. And I'm glad that, no wonder it was so popular and 2 million people came out to see it. If your picture was at the forefront.
Right? I mean, there you go. Imagine that now. No, just a small detail that just sprung to mind when you were saying that. But Simon, your role now, I know you're head of the VIP hospitality at the Tour de France. Can you just tell us, as succinctly as you can, what that actually means, what that looks like?
Okay. Škoda, as an official partner of the Tour, invite 15 guests every day to the Tour. And these guests come from all walks of life. I mean, they can be from as high up as the board of of the directors from Volkswagen to competitions, including fans, of course, and followers of We Love Cycling, because they have competitions on there, to the Škoda dealers themselves. So, for instance, if you've bought a few cars from Škoda, or you're well known to the dealer and they know you like cycling, they will likely put in, every year there's a round of invites, and they'll likely put in a request to put you in there, and they end up with the Willy Wonka golden ticket to come and see the Tour. Now, what that actually entails is, of course, Škoda fly you to wherever we are along the route. You get picked up, and it's a 48-hour total experience in that you arrive the day before the stage that you're on. I host the guests for dinner that evening. The following morning, and it's not just me, of course, we have a team of people, including Andy Schleck, of course, who's our cycling ambassador, former winner of the Tour. And we have 5 ex-professional riders who have great experience, who drive the guests in the race, around the race and in the race themselves. So that's obviously the big treat for the guests. And we start the day itself with what we call an early bird ride, which is an hour on the bike. Everyone gets quite a fancy bike, carbon, and the electronic gears and the discs and everything else. They ride with Andy and our other drivers, and it really sets the theme for the day. Of course, you don't have much time, so this typically happens at around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. They come back, shower, breakfast, pack the bags, run to the front of the hotel, into the race cars, and off we go to the departure village, where we'll bump into the likes of yourself and everyone else. There we take them around the team buses, obviously with our VIP drivers. They know the DSs, some of them know the riders. We're talking about like Tim Harris, another former British.
Know Tim very well, yeah.
Staff Skirlings. We've had Pedro Harillo in the past. We've got Frank Schleck this year as well. He's obviously helping out. Zdeněk Stybar. These are really experienced guys. So, it's all access, basically, and we'll get them as close to the race and the riders as possible, so they actually see the race from inside. As a fan, you see it from the outside in. They're looking at it from the inside out. And, of course, then the flag is dropped. They're in the car. They're, ahead of the race. Some of them are actually waiting for a break to go, and they'll drop in behind the breakaway. There's hospitality along the route. They've jumped in helicopters. There's picnics, and then they arrive at the finish line. With the hospitality club, right on the finish line, so that they see the riders cross the race. Of course, it's always a bit of local wine on offer in case they get thirsty, so that helps the experience as well. But look, they and then they're back to the hotel, and we do the whole process again, where I host them for dinner. We obviously watch a little bit of the race. I explain some of the things around the race, and these are typical, unorthodox things around the race that we talk about, and obviously interact with our ex-professionals and everything else. So look, the Tour de France is no ordinary event. Škoda has developed a hospitality experience that's beyond the ordinary. We do a spinal tap. We really crank things up to 11.
It sounds like, I've obviously been on big races, and it sounds like your experience is a lot more fun than the one I do. I think I need a bit more VIP, but no, I do love being on the road with Eurosport and the gang for the Tour. But what's the feedback like? Because I know that when I've been at the Škoda stand at the start of the Tribune, where, as you touched on, me and the Eurosport team, TNT team, hang out and have our meetings, and we're made to feel very welcome and looked after at the start of the day. But what's it like? And from my experience, my interaction with fans and guests there has been lovely. They want autographs. They want to talk about what's going on in the race. They seem to be like kids in a candy shop. The reaction from the fans, from your perspective, must be wonderful. It must feed your enthusiasm as well.
It really does. I've been doing this. Well, I've done 20. This will be my 20th tour this year.
Wow.
I've done 13 with Škoda. You'd think the novelty would have wear off, but actually it's the people. And what I mean by that is, from these guests, as I mentioned, some of them have never seen a bicycle race before. They don't know who Tadej Pogačar is or anyone. They're say tour virgins, or even bicycle. They've just arrived. They know nothing. And, even competition winners, they see, oh, trip to France, I fancy that, I'll do that. And they arrive. And but even how to say, they may say we entertain some of the top level guests, it can be a board member or whatever. And these are people who go to F1 at the Paddock Club and Wimbledon and all that. They have everything. But we blow their socks off. And that's because, first of all, even as a fan, cycling really has that connection because you're so close to the action. You're not in a stadium, you're not watching it from a hospitality tent. You're actually in the thick of it and you feel that. And in terms of the feedback, even the person who's been exposed to some of the biggest events in the world are simply blown away.
Yeah.
And, the number of times where, our guests say to you, that was the best day of my life, which is a big statement. It's not just a cliche, but it's, it's powerful, when they, you look at them, they genuinely mean it. And you get letters afterwards and emails and everything else, thanking you. And in terms of the effect and power that it has, two stories, Matt, I'll keep it brief. 2011, Czech guest from Czech Republic, very quiet, very unassuming. We didn't know who he was. Tim Harris was the lucky driver that day, and he's in the, obviously, passenger seat of the car. First time to a bike race. We didn't really know his background or anything else. And of course, he was just overwhelmed with it. And of course, he asked the question, how much does it cost to get involved with a professional cycling team? And of course, Tim rattled off some numbers. Wasn't really sure, to be honest with you. The same chap bought Quick Step 3 months later. This is Zdeněk Bakala.
Yes,
one of
right.
the guests. So there's a man who's never seen a bike race before to actually owning a professional cycle.
Wow.
A little bit of an extreme story. I'll give you another one. We had a competition winner, a lady from North Wales, and she turned up. And again, knew nothing about the tour. And of course, we present things and we introduce things in a way that everyone understands and everyone enjoys. And again, almost in tears, just overwhelmed with, I said it's an assault on the senses. And we saw her a year later at the Tour of Britain, walking along. We were walking along and we hear a voice, Tim, Simon, Turned around, we recognised this lady, but we barely recognised her because she'd lost about 15 kilos.
Wow,
she was there in a cycling kit with a bicycle, and she'd ridden there, the 60 kilometres to the finish line to go and see it. So there's someone who's never actually seen a bike race before, experienced anything like that, and then literally cycling becomes a big part of their life. So it affects people in all different ways, but always positive. So, that's it's a big plus from my perspective.
It must be, as you say, you've done a lot of tours now, 20 tours you're saying, but each time you can, especially you've got different parkour, different starts and finishes, different guests each day. Again, sounds like a bit of a cliche. It's going to be very, very different. Each stage experience for each individual person, depending on their background, is going to be utterly unique. And I, for Škoda, again, it was last year's Liège-Bastogne-Liège. There was a We Love Cycling, some competition winners. It was a father and son, a lovely couple of people. And I went on the experience with them at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So I sat in the car at the front with an ex-pro whose name escapes me, but was very, very good. And they sat in the back with this packed lunch with champagne. And we went ahead of the race, followed the breakaway, took a deviation, and they were absolutely blown away. And just to see, and I was blown away as well, because it was I'd never been in a VIP car. I've been in a team car, been on the motorbike, but again, each experience is different. And just to see, and they weren't that really into cycling, and that they'd had their knowledge of cycling was a little bit limited, but they absolutely loved it. And we went on a sportif the day before, and just to see the reaction and how humble they were afterwards in their gracious thanks was so wonderfully human. But it's amazing how cycling can connect people, and the weirdness, the strangeness, the enormity of bike racing, and how unorthodox it is compared to anything else, means that every experience is going to be unique and so multi-layered, isn't it? It's just great, isn't it?
It is very multi-layered, and I never get tired of it. I mean, honestly, getting a little advanced in my years now, but I still
Surely not.
I'm like a kid in a candy shop when I get there. The hairs on the neck, on the arms go up, and the goosebumps and everything else. So, but again, this is all enhanced by the people.
Yeah.
People who the hardened cycling fans obviously adore it, and those who are new to it, and you see that spark. It's amazing. Yeah.
And just a couple more questions before we wrap things up. Can you just tell me how? I've spoken to different people about their perspectives on the fandom of our sport, and significantly at the Tour de France. But I think that the fans they're a part of the Tour. Without it, the Tour wouldn't be the Tour. Just express from your perspective, as best you can, the importance of the fans at the side of the road at the Tour de France.
Absolutely essential. The event is not the same event without the fans. Why do I say that? First of all, it's just the variety of fans. What do I mean by that? Couples in camper vans, cycling fans, people who just come out from their houses to come and see it. And of course, we're talking at least 100,000 on the route every day, often more. And even our guests who sit in the car and they travel the entire route are just blown away. And actually, it's funny, we get requests for at the end of the stage, do you have any Panadol? Why? Because they're smiling, saying that they're jewelry. The other thing is when you're in a race vehicle, and the fans will wave to you, and there's kids and there's old people, and there's a whole variety of people, and of course you have to wave back. King Charles does this. You can't just sit there and not wave back, and of course their arms get tired. Because for 200 kilometres, it's these are the little things that that other sporting events don't quite have. So and of course when you really appreciate the effort that the fans have gone to be there. Yeah. And I often picture the scene. I see an elderly married couple at the side of the road with the camper van there, and you can think, how did this come about? And I'm picturing, it's sort of a winter's day in January. The husband says to the wife, we're going to go to the south of France this year. Of course, the wife's all excited. And of course, as the months go by, the details start to eke out. We're going to rent a camper van, and we're going to park on the side of a mountain for 2 days, and there'll be people all around us with multiple nationalities, with alcohol and barbecues, and then we're going to watch this thing go past us in a matter of minutes. But here's the thing, they love it. They just absolutely love it, and you can feel that as you drive past them. And I never take it for granted. They're just the enthusiasm and the love, the passion that they have for this race. And again, some of them at the side of the road can't even name one rider, but it's just the spectacle.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful thing, and it never ceases to amaze and astound me. But also, I don't take it for granted. And when I was talking to Joe Rousel, who's a commentator as well, and our responsibility as commentators to constantly remind people and reference the crowd. Not that you can't, because they're there in your face, parting away as the riders pass through at the side of a mountain, you can't not reference the fans, because they are an important constituent part of what makes bike racing, and of course the Tour de France, the colour, the passion, the love is there, and I think it's fair to say, to wrap things up, it's actually interwoven within French society as well. As the Giro is the same for Italy, the Vuelta the same for Spain, but it is a part of who they are, isn't it? And that's how significant this race is.
It is. It's an event. In the constitution of the country, it's an event of national importance. And unofficially, if the Tour is passing by your area, or at least at the start and finish there, it's a public holiday. It's not official, but everybody comes out to support it. Everything stops, and of course there's again the economy benefits for all the number of people who come and visit. So it's a win-win. I've never met anyone who is against it or doesn't like it. In the run-up to, particularly when you do overseas, outside of France, UK, for instance, 1994, many parish council meetings, endless, explaining to the public why they can't go out of their driveway for a couple of hours. But of course, once it comes, then they realise it's just a big party and a festival and should be celebrated. Yeah.
It is indeed, and it's back in a couple of years' times on British shores, isn't it? But Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You will be at the tour this year, so we will meet. I'll no doubt come and share a coffee, or maybe a glass of a cheeky glass of wine with you at some point in Škoda hospitality, mate. But you're off to France very shortly as well, aren't you?
Next week, yeah, next week. Couple of days in Belgium just to prepare. I'll be with Tim Harris, and then we'll be to Lille at that weekend, and then it all kicks off. I also do the Tour de France Femmes, of course, which again, an amazing event, incredible. And last thing, Matt, I've got to say this. People ask you, what was your favourite Tour de France as a fan? And of course, 1989, Greg LeMond, Laurent
Of course,
Fignon.
yeah.
That was surpassed last year with the Tour de France Femmes. Stage 8, Demi Vollering, Kasia Niewiadoma. The excitement of that, I think, was, probably one of my best in 40 years. So.
I would tend to agree with that. It was. I was blown away. I don't mind admitting it. I was a little bit tearful at the side of the road. Trying to remain impartial after seeing what had just unfolded was a struggle for me. So there was definitely imparted some genuine emotion when reporting from what was utterly magnificent. So I will see you on the road, because I'm on the road for the whole of July for the Tour and the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. So Simon, I'll see you there, and thanks again.
See you then, mate. Take care.
Cheers.